done, right, for this module?
Yes, we are all liberated from DB after this. We are free.
And then there's not a break week either, right? The next Monday starts the next, I think the next Monday starts the next one or not? Would you get a break? Okay.
Yeah, I'll make that announcement. We won't start the next one until July 20th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oops.
Maybe that'll give me a chance to catch up on the reading for this one.
Right. I'm going to give you homework reading too.
Yeah.
I have some extra reading to give you all.
Okay. I used to keep up, and somewhere around Christmas I started falling behind, and now I'm just like in catch-up mode all the time. But
yeah, well, very understandable.
So we are streaming on YouTube.
Okay, everybody behave. Sometimes I'm Zooming with people at my job, you know, and I don't know what they're thinking, but they kind of forget, and the guy will start taking off his shirt, and I'm like, everybody's clothes, stay on. Sit up, everybody sit up. I heard this judge who was giving telling the bar association, this is in Florida, to get their act together. He was like, it's a hearing, even though you're on Zoom, it's still a hearing. You don't have to wear a tie, but please wear clothes. Get out of your pajamas. Don't sit by the pool. These are lawyers. A couple minutes. How many people are on YouTube? Can you tell?
Switch over. 2.
Okay.
look who came.
Oh, there's a dog.
That's my dog.
Cute.
He came to get enlightened tonight.
What's his name?
Animal Liberation, Jasper.
Jasper. I had a gerbil named Jasper.
I had a cat named Jasper.
I met somebody who named their, I can't remember if it was a boy or a girl, Jasper.
That's a good name. If he starts barking, I'll keep him quiet.
We're getting some imprints.
Yeah.
Positive imprints. Yeah, I don't know why. The last class is almost always on the light side. We'll probably be able to put all of you in one breakout room together.
Yeah.
I used to think it was because on the last class I usually gave a test, but I didn't say that I was going to be giving it, and I'm not giving a test. I think we can
In fact, I think you said you weren't going to give a test.
Made that very clear. The conditions are not good for testing. So yeah, maybe everybody just got enough. That's fine. So yeah, this is our last class. Linda, do you want to say anything about DB?
Yeah, so here, hang on, I'll spotlight myself for the sake of our YouTubers. So welcome everybody. Hang on, I'm going to pause for just a second. Other folks are just getting signed in, so give them a minute before I start our announcements.
Sure.
Okay, so yes, this is the last class for Samsara and Nirvana. Then we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we will start transforming problems on July 20th. That's going to be a 6-week session. So that will go from July 20th to August 24th. And Robbie Watkins will be back with us for that session. But have no fear, there's still so many things you can be involved in at the Kadampa Center online. There are teachings with Geshe Geluk, there are Tara practices, meditation practices. So just be sure to pull up the Kadampa Center calendar at kadampa-center.org and see what all is happening at the center, even virtually, while the center doors are closed temporarily. We are still very much moving forward online with lots of things happening. If you are going to turn in your completion card for this module, just remember it is on it's like the second page of the about the module, and that can be found online. So again, if you go to kadampa-center.org and then under spiritual program, go to beginner programs and then look for discovering Buddhism material. Once you're there, go ahead and scroll down to DB, Samsara, and Nirvana, and you'll see two documents there, the about the module document as well as the homework document. And again, on the second page of about the module is the completion card, and you can email that to me. I will put my email address in the chat box momentarily, but it is program.db@kadampa-center.org. So again, program.db@kadampa-center.org. And again, I'll put it in the chat box. So for Zoomers, of course, you can feel free to mute your audio. We will be spotlighting Steep momentarily, and I will be muting myself. If you do have a question, just type that into the chat box. For those of you streaming on YouTube, I will be monitoring that chat box as well. So if you have questions and you're streaming via YouTube, just put your questions right into the chat box on YouTube. And I think those were all of the announcements. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Steve now.
Well, welcome everybody. Let me know if you have trouble hearing me, or let Linda know. And since this is the last class, I just want to remind people that the center depends on donations. So while there's no fee to take this class or the classes, there's still ways to be able to donate to the center remotely. And I haven't been making a pitch for that, but I think in these times, the center is probably even going to need help as much as possible. So, your generosity is greatly appreciated. Those of you who've contributed in any ways that you already can, and those of you who will be, thank you. Also, Geshe-la hopefully will be back in this country. The border is closed in Argentina, so he should be back, September, October. That's what we're hoping for, but this is very fluid. And the reason I bring it up is I always encourage people when they, when you're serious, and you've moved forward and you practice enough and you've got some questions that you really have worked with and you need some help, setting an appointment with Geshe-la. He can meet you at the center before a class and talk to you and answer your questions. And he'd be very interested to know how your practice is going, and to help this is what he's here for. This is what he loves to do. So think about that. If you're somebody who's been kind of shy about talking with him personally, I'd encourage you to give it a try. He's so approachable, so non-judgmental. He just meets you where you're at. He's not going to give you homework unless you ask him. He'll just answer your questions and try to support you. So consider that. Okay, so I'm not going to look at chat. I'm going to let Linda take care of that. And we're going to start by setting our intention. So first of all, is there anybody here for the very first time, either in this module or altogether? And do you see any hands up, Linda? Okay, because then I just would want to welcome you and say something a little different. So we set our intention just like we are doing all day long, even though we might not be conscious of it. And you know how it is when you have a really positive intention to say go to work or whatever it is that you're going to do, how much that changes your whole experience. So likewise, we try to, first of all, use ourself. Why am I here? Why am I interested in this? Why am I trying to understand about Samsara and Nirvana? So just take a minute to think about that for yourself. What is it that you personally, on kind of a mundane level are hoping for? It might be to get more information, to understand how samsara works, understand how reality works, to help yourself stay calmer in this some very samsaric time. So I always start with that because it's all right to include your own kind of the micro, and then try to expand your intention out to including other people with an understanding that as you achieve your goals, if they're, dharmic goals, they will certainly benefit the people around you. So as you become wiser and kinder and have more patience, as you reduce your anger and attachment and ignorance, as you are able to apply more of the antidotes to the delusions that we discussed, your whole mind state will be calmer, wiser, all the things that you're trying to grow. And all of those beings around you, those you know and those you don't know, will benefit. How easy it is to lose our state of mind, our peace of mind. But also with effort and practice, we are able to apply antidotes and develop a calmer, better state of mind. So setting the intention that this is why we're here today, understanding digging in and understanding the way that samsara works and how to escape it. And then we're just going to start with a breathing meditation. So make sure your back is straight. Check your posture and all the points that we've gone over so that you can remain as alert as possible. Developing your focus, your muscle of focus. And as you exhale for the next couple of minutes, imagine you're exhaling all the negative things you want to release today. So you're inhaling pure, clear wisdom and compassion from all the enlightened beings around. And this is then purifying and clearing you as you exhale whatever unease, worry, physical discomfort, fatigue, monkey mind, whatever it is that you want to release. Imagine that you're letting that go with each exhale. And as you feel these start to leave, bring your mind to the count of your breath so that every time your mind wanders, you bring it back to your breath. And you can count your breaths. 1 inhale, 1 exhale, 2 inhale, 2 exhale. And for about the next 5 minutes, And slowly open your eyes and stretch whatever you need to do. In a little bit, we'll get into some groups to discuss the homework, which, if you remember, I give homework that's very geared to your everyday life, because I feel like if we're not able to apply this, it just, stays here, just stays on your bookshelf. And so, practicing ways of bringing this into your everyday life is super helpful, at least in my experience. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that, like, there's all different kinds of ways to arrange the material. We could have spent the entire class, 4 classes, on just looking at the Wheel of Life, which we're going to talk about later today, because it's rich and it has all kinds of information that everything we're talking about could fit into that. Or we could have spent all the time talking about this in context of the Four Noble Truths. There's just so many ways to do it. And one of the reasons that we really focused a lot on the delusions and their antidotes is just because of the challenging times that we're living through. But like all of the courses in Buddhism, there's all these lists. We've talked about the 3 kinds of suffering, right? The suffering, the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive suffering. And I'm just reviewing a couple things as we're winding up here. And remember that when sometimes the word suffering is a little bit extra and loaded in our language, and really, what we're talking about is unease, that things aren't reliably secure. That kind of dis-ease, discomfort, unease, it's the whole spectrum. So it's that to like enormous suffering, that whole spectrum of dis-ease that we're talking about when we're looking at those 3 kinds of suffering. And why are we breaking it all down into like 3 kinds of sufferings, 6 kinds of delusions: anger, attachment, ignorance, pride, doubt, wrong view. We talk about 8 kinds of sufferings: birth, aging, sickness, death, encountering the unpleasant, being separated from the pleasant, not achieving one's desires, taking rebirth with contaminated aggregates. That's what we have. There's also the 6 sufferings that I wanted to go over again. Yeah. So suffering of uncertainty, like, how friendships and relationships can change. Nothing is static. So that uncertainty, uncertain situations. The suffering of dissatisfaction. You have your mind set on something, where you're going to eat or what you're going to do, and then there's a pandemic. Or, just the uncertainty, the dissatisfaction. So there's this suffering of uncertainty, but then the suffering of dissatisfaction. You're not happy with something that you have been looking forward to. Just the things, just our everyday little sufferings. Suffering of leaving our body again and again. That's more the whole everyday, every life in samsara. Until we get out, we just have to, one more time. It's like Groundhog Day, lifetime after lifetime. Suffering of meeting up with suffering again and again. So every time we take another birth, then we encounter all the different kinds of sufferings or dis-ease that we're talking about. The suffering of rising and falling. And I think I mentioned to you how Venerable Rabina describes this as like fireflies in a jar. Some are at the bottom, some are at the top, but none of them are out unless they're able to escape somehow, or unless the lid comes off. So we might have a rebirth that's very wonderful. We're in the celestial realms. Everything is seemingly fantastic. Another rebirth, not so good, but none of them are completely free of that just endless cycling. So this is another category of suffering or disease. The suffering of being alone, that no matter, no one can ever really know your particular unique life, suffering, happiness as you do. So that suffering of feeling isolated in that kind of a way. So why are we breaking down suffering into all these different categories? A couple of reasons. One is so that we don't get complacent, I think for multiple reasons, but one is so that we can see the nature of where we are. so that we don't, it's not that you shouldn't enjoy relationships or a good trip somewhere or a nice meal. It's not that you shouldn't enjoy it, but understanding these kind of lists and what makes up this uncomfortableness, this unease, is so that we don't come to take refuge in those things that isn't going to really provide us refuge. That again, it doesn't mean going away from those things. It means knowing that those things go away. That's the real key, to constantly remind yourself. It doesn't mean going away from relationships, homes, children, all those things, but it means knowing that those things go away. And so what we're really trying to renounce again is suffering. We're trying to renounce our unhappiness. We're trying to renounce the problems that we encounter again and again. And so this kind of dissecting where we are helps us, because sometimes it's so beautiful. We have, what rises up in us is this craving to stay, or this craving to keep this situation right here, instead of keeping our eyes on the larger prize. So we can use all these things that are in our life to help us escape it. But the key is to remember, it's not just about rearranging and making everything look wonderful here. Certainly we can use our happiness and our joy that we encounter to try to expand it, and try to expand it bigger, not in the ways that we think, not in terms of getting more days off from work or a better salary or more of this kind of relationship, but expanding our capacity for real sustained happiness that isn't based on some of those other conditions. The other thing I think is that, you know, if you were, well, let's take the coronavirus. If I had the coronavirus, as doctors are, we're trying to understand each and every aspect of it. You know, we're trying to dissect every little bit of the suffering of the virus and what brought it on, what are the conditions, what makes it worse, what makes it better, so that we can find a cure for it. And if you had the virus or any other disease that right now is incurable and confusing, if somebody found the cure and came to you and said, hey, I know something you can do so that you don't have to suffer from this disease, you would be enormously grateful. You would hopefully take the antidotes and be free of the suffering of the virus or the suffering of whatever illness plagued you. That's the exact reason we study the disease that we have, which is samsara. Because it's so much more complicated, and it just continues again and again. That's whole thing of meeting suffering again and again. You know, it's like having the virus again and again and again and again and again. There are days going to be better days and worse days, but until we get a vaccine, it's just going to be circling around and around again. So sometimes it's helpful to remind ourselves, why are we looking at all these lists? But, you know, so the teachings are considered the medicine. You know, the Buddha is considered the doctor. And so you're the one who can apply the medicine, apply the antidotes. And like I said in the very beginning, you're the one who knows your mind, and you know which ones, you know, as you get more practiced, you'll know which ones you need to apply when. So it might not be very helpful at a certain time to apply meditation on impermanence. You might need to apply a different kind of meditation. That's where it really comes up to what you need to know in the moment, you know. And like I also said, the key is that each one of these is meant to empower you. So meditating on death helps somebody in one situation. Meditating on, you know, the downsides of anger is going to help somebody in a different situation. So what discovering Buddhism is meant to do is to give you this solid introduction to all the different things that you can apply. And then, you know, talking to somebody more in detail about, well, which one should I apply now? Or I've moved this far in my practice, what should I do next? That's where, you know, somebody like Geshe Sampo or Geshe Geluk can help you. Okay, so I wanted to lead us on this one meditation that I think might help. I wanted to say one other thing. So we talked about the delusions, the 6 delusions, and I remembered this story. So I think I've told you all that, you know, I took care of my mother for, it was like 6 years when she moved here after Hurricane Katrina, and she had vascular dementia. And in taking care of her and watching her decline, it was such a confusing illness. I came to realize, okay, the actual definition of dementia is just confusion, because there's 100 different kinds of dementia, literally 100 different kinds. And what I came to see is, we all have dementia. It's just, unless we're enlightened, we all have confusion. It's just a matter of degree. And so I could see my mother's dementia kind of, wax and wane. And then I could, during the day, I would tell myself, oh, now this is my dementia, whatever was going on that I was upset about. And that's that person's dementia, which were more ordinary kinds of dementia, more the kinds that we're used to dealing with every day. But it really helped me. And then when I had to place her in this one assisted living for a while, these other women who were probably in better shape than my mom, they really looked out for her. They brought her to their dining room table and helped feed her because she had a lot of trouble with her motor skills. And I was telling the head nurse there, I said, that's really so touching to see these women helping my mom. And the nurse said something I'll never forget. She said, everybody here in this facility, the people, she said, in this facility who know why they're here, meaning they knew that they had some illness or they were frail or some of them were in early stages of Alzheimer's. She goes, the people who know why they're here, they turn around and help the other people. And I just felt like she had just given me this huge Dharma lesson, because those of us who know why we are in this cycle of samsara, meaning we know that we have created the causes and conditions to be here. We know that we're not in a pure land. We know we're not free of suffering. Those of us who know it turn around, hopefully, and try to help other people, because we're all in the same boat. It's just a little bit different. The women at my mom's table, my mom could walk perfectly well, but she couldn't feed herself. She couldn't talk. So they knew that, I can do these things, so I can help her. And so I feel like it's like that. We can sit around and compare, but it's not really going to help anybody very much. Or we can say, I can do this better than this person. I'll help them with that. So I just thought this was, I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience when this nurse said that, because I thought, this is such a great Dharma lesson. Those of us who know why we're here turn around and help other people. And so like that, because my mother had no idea why she was there. I mean, her dementia was too far to really understand. She was mostly just upset. Okay, so that's my dementia story. All right, so let's do this meditation that I if you've been in one of my DB classes before, you're probably familiar with this one, but I'm gonna change it up a little bit. But I did this when I was in New Orleans before Katrina. There was a small Dharma group I was helping with there, and Geshe Geluk came and helped me kind of get them organized to do some discovering Buddhism there. And we did this meditation that after Katrina, people wrote me and said that meditation helped them so much with the insanity after Katrina. I mean, because everybody in that group was severely affected. Many of them didn't ever come back to New Orleans. And so they were all in really awful straits and temporary housing. And so the meditation that we did at that time was, I wanted them to think of a place that they were very familiar with. And the reason I'm telling you this instead of doing it is we're going to change it up a little bit. So I asked them to think about, a place, a home, a building that they were very familiar with. So let's say they were thinking of their house that they'd lived in for 20 years. And so then I had them really go in this meditation, walk through the place and really look at it, look at everything. And then we would go back, in time, like 2 or 3 years, and now look at that place. What was different 2 or 3 years ago? And then we went back in time, like 10 years, and take a look at it, and then we just kept going back until now they were using their imagination to, like, before they got there, what did it possibly look like? And then to go back in time to when it was built, and then to go back in time before it was built, way back in time, to go back as far as they could possibly imagine in time, and then to go forward in time and imagine what might happen in this building might look like in 2 years and 10 years and as far forward. So kind of just looking at the complete impermanence of this setting from a kind of neutral perspective as an observer. And what it helped people see is just kind of the river of change, and that even when it's a bumpy change, it's still moving. And there's things that we can put into that river that make it better or worse in terms of the turbulence of the water, in terms of what's going to happen downstream. So like that, we can also do that with an idea we have, an idea that we're kind of passionate about or involved with. So it's an idea about religion or Buddhism or spirituality or meditation. We can kind of trace it back and then try to go back farther and farther, and same thing, forward and forward. So I thought it might be interesting to do that. You can certainly take your pick, but I'll give you a couple and we'll go through it. You can either pick something larger than a building. So it could be your spot in this country. You in the United States right now, your experience of the United States, and you can go back in time and go forward, and I'll walk you, I'm going to lead you through that in a minute. Or you could pick something more abstract, like an idea that you have. So take a second to pick one. If you're not sure of an idea that you have, for example, there was somebody in one of the classes once who asked me, he was doing it on, he was involved in like Shakespearean literature and preserving Shakespearean literature. And so he used that, because then he could even go back before Shakespeare and think of like what went into creating the causes for Shakespeare to write, and just writing in general and communicating and talking, all that. So you could take something that you're interested in, that you're very involved in, say you're a computer scientist, you could do that. Or you could take the country, and seeing you in the country, and then eventually it won't be you. It'll still be on Earth. Okay, does that, anybody have any questions? Linda, anything I need to pay attention to before we do this? Okay. All right.
I think we look good.
Okay, good. So we're gonna spend about 5 minutes on this. I'll walk you through it, and then we're gonna go into breakout rooms where I want you to discuss this as well as the homework, and then we'll come back for a group conversation. Okay, so get into a comfortable position. Again, if you're sitting in a chair, try to put your feet on the floor or have your legs crossed. I mean, crossed like you're sitting on the floor, not crossed at the knee, because you want the circulation good. You want to feel relatively grounded. The most important part is that your back is straight. So tuck your chin just a little bit, because your spine, your neck is an extension of the spine. You don't want that. You want that as straight as possible, but with each vertebrae kind of balancing on top of the next one, so that there's as little tension as possible. Your arms out away from your body so that your breathing isn't impaired at all. You can have your eyes just gently closed or lightly open to keep you alert. Put your tongue at the back of your teeth, relaxing your jaw. Just take a few deep breaths. And then bring all your awareness to this topic that you're choosing. And take a look at you engaged in it, whether it's the country or something more abstract, but your place in this, where you are right now, what's going on right now, any news about this that you may have encountered today or currently. Just look at it as though you're a couple of steps away, watching it all, watching you in relation to this. Notice anything that's important, the feelings in your body, the sensations in your body, the thoughts in your mind, those around you, those connected. All the different parts of this currently, all the different strands. And then go back in time about a year, so last summer, and look at yourself again in relation to this object you've chosen. It's almost July 4th. It's the end of June. It's hot. What's going on? What are you thinking, feeling about this topic you've chosen? Any information that you have? And then go back in time 5 years. (2015). Roughly 5 years. Take note of anything that comes to mind in your relationship with this. You know, if it helps to jog your memory, where were you living then? What was going on for you then? So how is this affecting your relationship with this topic? You're looking at all the connections, all the causes and conditions that are around at that time. Your feelings. And now go back to the year 2000. Where were you living 20 years ago? What was going on generally in your life, and how did this affect your relationship with this topic? How was it different? Is it more focused or more blurry? And now go back to when you were a teenager. For some of us, that's a big jump, but try to make it anytime when you were a teenager and your relationship to this same topic. It's going to be obviously different. What are the differences? What do you notice? And then keep going back in time in your mind throughout your childhood to see what pops up for you that's connected to this. Doesn't have to be in sequence, but just take notice of the things that you can remember in your childhood that are related to this topic. And how are they related? And how did you feel? What's the variety of people and feelings connected? And then take a much bigger leap so that now you're not watching your life, but you're watching this topic before this life. What can you imagine was connected? Because this thing didn't arise just out of nothing. So what was going on before you were born? Maybe immediately before you were born. In that decade, what are some of the things that you imagine or happening. Keep going back in time as far as you want. And now come back to the present moment. You're back sitting in your chair, this place that you started from. And move forward a year. What are some possibilities for next year, next June, with your relationship and this topic? What are some possible things that you'll be seeing? And keep moving forward another 5 years. Move forward as far as you feel comfortable going into the future. You're the creator of this movie now, so you can take it in any direction you want. Just notice your impressions, your feelings. Okay, and then slowly come back to the present moment. And as you're ready, open your eyes. If you want to jot down any notes so that you can remember what you were seeing, so you can share them with your group. As we put you in breakout rooms of 3, 4 people, please introduce yourself if you haven't met the people there before. And let's see, you'll have about 15 minutes to, I would suggest, start by talking about this exercise and share what you picked and what you saw or any trouble you had with it. And think of then things to share with the larger group, because we'll all be curious. So share what you saw and then listen to other people and take a note of any kind of similarities, differences, and be ready to share. And if you have time, but if you don't worry about it. We'll talk about it together. Anything from, if you finish all of that, then talk about the homework that you did last week of applying antidotes. Okay, so Linda's gonna move everybody and then we will be back in about 15 minutes.
Okay, give me just a second, you guys. I'm gonna put you in breakout rooms. Okay, here we go.
Linda, did you leave me?
No, I'm here.
And the YouTubers. Okay, so YouTubers, I'm sorry you can't hear each other, but we'll be getting people to share their experiences. So you might want to jot down things that you notice so you don't forget them. Sometimes we think we're going to remember them, but it's just such a different part of our brain that we're using.
It looks like we have six folks on YouTube right now.
So why have you disappeared?
I don't know.
Oh, there you go.
I had you spotlighted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I usually have it in the gallery view so I can see everybody, or now it's just you and me. Yeah, so what'd you think about that exercise?
Oh, I liked it a lot. I remember doing that in another class, another DB module. I can't remember which one it was.
With
Um,
me?
no, I think Don Brown did it actually. Yeah.
Okay.
And oh, what was that class? And we went back farther and farther, and I picked a spot in Umstead, one of my favorite hiking places. So it was interesting, and I came out of it, and we were sharing our experience, and I was very sad about it because Umstead in the distant future, had like graffiti and
Oh, no.
was run down. And it turns out that someone who works for state parks was in the class. And he came up and talked to me afterwards. He's like, "No, don't worry. Umstead will be preserved. It'll all be good and still be there."
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's nice. I mean, and since the future is not fixed, yeah, keep meditating on it being preserved. So that was the guy who, did the Shakespeare work, had said to me it disturbed him because he said, so, everything's so changeable. Does that mean that, that we're going to lose Shakespeare's works, So this is a question that comes up quite a bit about impermanence. And I said, no, it doesn't have to be. I mean, but you can see that now, like, people are doing Shakespeare in a modern way, and how many people he has influenced, and how that's taken off. So anyway, I've had other people say, does this mean like we shouldn't do things like try to save the whales? I was like, no, it doesn't mean that.
yeah.
But so what did you pick? What topic did you pick this time?
So this time I actually just I put an offer on a new house on Friday.
Oh,
I'm announcing this on YouTube. This is so funny. And the seller accepted my offer. So I thought about that house
wow.
and what it looked like. It was built in 1960, so kind of went back and what it looked like. And it's been completely renovated. So I'm sure it was not looking quite as good as it looks right now. And, what is it going to look like once I'm there and do things to it and make it, my space. So,
well, congratulations.
well, thank you. I'm a little nervous seeing how the situation that we're in right now, but
Yeah.
here we are.
Right. Yeah, interesting. I picked the country,
Mhm.
a big one, big topic.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten certain things, like, so when parts of it were like, and then when I hit my childhood, well, even my adolescence, I was really involved in politics because it was the early 70s. And I was very, very interested in feminism and I can remember when women were allowed to be on juries. It was like 1973 or something. And, I remember when I was first allowed to wear pants to school, because you could not wear pants. Title IX never really made it to New Orleans, so we never had girls' teams. Anyway, then I went back to my childhood, and I remember I remember when John Kennedy got shot. I was like 5 or something, and so I remember all these assassinations, and just being, that's what I grew up on, was all this, upheaval and assassinations, and just seemed like really difficult, So it was very interesting to go back even before that, though, to kind of make the leap outside of this life and look at the whole country and then move way forward. Yeah, it's interesting.
So how did our future look to you?
Well, I did think like maybe this is helping us prepare for stopping everything on a dime to deal with climate change. If we're able to stop everything because of the pandemic, not that there aren't consequences for it, but my hope is that we are learning ways to communicate and build responses to more and more urgent things, and we're going to have to. I mean, I think before, like, this had never, I'd never seen anything like this, the whole world doing something at once, you know? So now it's kind of like, yeah, this is what we're in. But in the very beginning of the virus, that was stunning to me. I mean, like, every place on earth, everybody's kind of just stopped.
Right.
So I guess that kind of gives me a little bit of hope that maybe we can do something similar as we move forward in time. Yeah, I'll go with that for now.
Yeah.
I need something positive. Yeah. Yeah, but just seeing our connections to these larger systems, you know. But at first I was starting to do my profession, but I was like, oh, I don't really, I spent all day in my profession. I think I'll just pick the country.
Yeah, just the country.
Just the country. But I also remember as a kid, I mean, country didn't make any sense to me. You know, it was just my neighborhood. And also when I was, my first memories are in this little group of apartments, and there were people from all different countries. You know, there was from Africa and India and Italy, and there was this opera singer, and, you know, you just walked around this little group because it was for housing for people working at this university where my father was. Mm-hmm. And so it was so international, but that's just what I thought was normal. So I didn't really understand countries, but I remember feeling connected to this little group, and we had a community garden and a community laundry, and yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if anyone that is listening to YouTube now and streaming, feel free to chat anything in the chat box, because I am monitoring that. So you're welcome to, you know, ask questions or share.
No heckling, no heckling. But yeah, feel free to write away. It's so strange to, yeah. Yeah, we'll see how much time we have to do. I mean, the 12 links is so rich and thick. It's hard to do it justice in 15 minutes. Yeah. Can I, in the teacher material, you can look at kind of sample classes that other teachers, FPMT teachers, how they've managed this course. Mm-hmm. They're so different. Some are just focusing on the 12 links. Some don't even touch it. Some just touch the delusions and the antidotes. Huh. That's it. So I tried to, like, well, I want to give people the lists, but I also really think, right. And I talked to Geshe about it, because I said, you know, I can go in this direction or this direction. People seem really to be responding to talking about the delusions and the antidotes. He's like, yes, stick with that right now. He's taught a lot of classes on the 12 links, and, you know, you can go in different directions with the 12 links. You can use it just sequentially, but that's not even necessarily the way that it was designed to be used. So, yeah.
We do have a comment on YouTube. The Wheel of Life will be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see if there's time. If there's time. If not, we're going to send out this link that has a really wonderful article on FPMT that describes, it's not too long, so it's something you could read over lunch and really learn a lot from.
Great.
So do you want to tell them they have about 4 minutes left?
Okay.
Well, you are going to be busy if you're going to be, when are you going to be moving in? Well, you can tell me.
Oh, we're supposed to close on July 30th.
Okay,
Yeah, July and August are going to be a little bit busy.
a little bit. A little bit, yeah.
Uh,
I've moved so many times in my life. I was reading that the average American moves 11 and a half times in their lifetime, in their whole life. I think, oh my God, I moved that many times before I was 19. So
Oh,
I'm kind of used to it. You see, it's so different when we're doing this at the center and I can kind of hear what people are saying and I walk around and then you're in a group so that you can kind of report on something.
right.
And you just feel that whether they're kind of engaged or whether they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Very different.
I'll give them a 1-minute warning.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, yeah. I'm ready to bring them back. Linda, program assistant to everyone. 1 minute, guys. So what's the next class is transforming problems. I like that class.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And there's teachers.
Robbie will be back to teach that one.
Uh-huh. And there's teachers for how many? They're all set for the next year, right?
Well, we only have 3 more modules after this one: transforming problems, wisdom of emptiness, and then tantra. So we've got Robbie Watkins, Heyman, and Don Brown. And then that's it for this 2-year series.
Uh-huh.
All right, folks are going to be coming back now.
Okay. put away my toys. Oh, I didn't click the right button. Welcome back, everybody. So who wants to give a report first? So how many groups were there, Linda?
There were, what, 3 groups with 4 people, and 3 people.
Okay, I forgot to give them names.
Oh yeah, we were gonna do that this week.
Yeah, give them names, like say the Camp Butterfly report first, please. So who were the butterflies? You don't know? Okay, Karen, you're a butterfly? So yeah, so somebody, we're gonna need a brave person. You were gonna pick people, remember, to report.
Have I been chosen as a butterfly to report? Is that what we're saying? Okay.
Who were the butterflies?
So like our group, we did this. I was saying to our group, we did this. And I don't know if it was with you, Steve, or someone else, but we did this meditation in another DB class as well. And at that time, I chose my house. You know, like just the traditional, like, you know, back to dinosaurs and Big Bang and forward to crumbling and decay and like, you know, all that. So I didn't really want to repeat that. So I picked this topic and I didn't do very well with it, but I picked like my spiritual path, you know, and trying to become enlightened and like where I am now with this class and Kadampa Center and like where I was a year ago and how I was enjoying what I was learning, but I was like there was so much going on in my life. It felt like life was just trying to tear me from the path. You know, I was just inundated with so many bad things happening. So I wasn't really enjoying it like I would have liked to. And, you know, and then going back to like when I was in school or whatever and seeing that there was just this common thread of interest in this all the time and wondering what might have happened in my past life to create that. And of course I have no idea, but it's just interesting to speculate. And then going forward, I was like, well, what, you know, where's this path going to take me? Like, where do I hope it'll take me?
Mhm.
Can't really imagine what it'll be like, but hopefully good, you know, hopefully I stay on path. And we talked about veering off the path too, you know, a little bit. So I'll let the other butterflies talk about their
Okay.
thing. Thanks.
Yeah, and please do, people, speak up. You know, you can share your experience or what you found interesting about the ones that you were listening to, kind of the overlap, the commonalities or challenges in doing this.
Okay, I'll go.
So I will make it short. I felt like we all came to a point, like Alan Watts says, that you are wherever you have been dreaming to be.
Mhm.
Throughout your life. So I felt like that's where I am, especially I felt like that's where I am. But you still have to figure out. I was focusing on just not a house or anything. I was just focused on activity, one of the activity which I do, studying. So I felt like I came to a point where I wanted to be, where I am, kind of. But there, even through meditation, I couldn't figure out what my future or anything. I was just there in unknown zone.
Yeah, we're not going to become fortune tellers, just trying to see the fluidity of the past and the future. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I'll go. All right, this butterfly. So my peers, if I miss something, just let me know. So the 3 of us talked, and what we all had in common was that we were looking at either professionally or, you know, how to develop ourselves in a way that we can offer to the larger community, some through civil action, some through learning more to be of service to others, and how to bring people together and let them benefit from it. And the 3 of us also saw that it was a good outlook on, you know, where we would be in a year. So that was kind of nice.
Okay. Yeah, if we're the ones imagining the future, we don't have to have it be crumbling and falling apart. That tends to be what we think of when we think of impermanence, you know, is okay, and then everything falls apart. But something arises out of the falling apart. And that's where we can switch kind of the fear of impermanence to something empowering. And what can we do to contribute to that arising? Anyone else? We can go to other, you know, I think it was the bluebirds. There was also bluebirds and bears or something. Sticking with the bees. Anybody else?
We did have a comment from one of the folks who's watching via YouTube who said, like Steep, my topic was the country also, and it helps to look forward with optimism. So thank you, because Steep shared looking with more of a positive light in the future, which was nice.
Yeah, I looked at my relationship to the country and how I feel right this minute and went back in time. And then I think what surprised me, well, when I was a teenager, because I am old, I remember when women in Louisiana were allowed to be on juries. So I remember that when I was in high school. And then, you know, I was very, very interested and very involved in things in New Orleans. And then when I was young, you know, my memories were all about, I was like 5 when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. You know, I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated and Bobby Kennedy. So all these assassinations and protests were very much a part of my early life. And I didn't really understand countries, but I understood all that, you know, things were dangerous. But then as soon as I released, I don't know if you all went back, how far you went back, but for me, as soon as I got out of this life, history went really, really fast. And then when I went forward, history went really, really fast. And it was kind of blurry, but I could just see kind of this movement and where I would prefer things to go and relating to it. But in this life, looking at it, things kind of were very slow. But again, the whole point of it is to help us develop an ability to just appreciate the impermanence and to see what are our contributions to where we want things to go. You know, that we are creating our future all the time. And so even when it's in something such as large as the country. And one time when I did this exercise, the person I told you about who was like a Shakespearean scholar or something, somehow he was involved in preserving Shakespearean literature. And he was very dismayed. And he said, so does this mean that like Shakespearean literature is going to disappear? Which is a lot of times the fear that comes up when we meditate on impermanence. I said, oh, absolutely not. You know, one of the things that you can meditate on is all the impact that his literature had on other writers, right? So, you know, he's focusing on this text staying the same way, but what about looking at how it's the ripple effect and even the influences on him, on Shakespeare to write that before he was alive. And so then now way after his death, the impact of his work and the modernization of his work and, you know, where it will go. And even if it did disappear, does it really disappear? And so on and so forth. So just in case you ever have any of those questions when you're meditating on impermanence. The other thing that comes up, another question that comes up quite a bit, yeah, people will ask me, well, does this mean that like it just seems so hopeless? Well, people feel hopeless when they meditate on impermanence, but again, it's meant to empower you. So people would ask me, like, does it mean like we shouldn't even try to preserve things? And I said, no, I think like people try all the time and succeed in preserving rainforests or this animal or whatever it is. It's not meant, we put effort into that. Monks are putting effort into freeing Tibet. It doesn't mean we give those things up. It means we're looking at what can we do? And if we can do it, do it. Okay, any questions or thoughts or comments about that exercise? Did you find it helpful? Okay. All right. Yeah, let me know. Let me know how it goes, and especially moving forward. You know, you can pick all kinds of topics that come up in your life and tracing them backwards and forwards. So we have a little bit of time left. It's really hard to get into the whole wheel of life right now. I'm going to ask Linda to share the screen to show it to you, and I'll just tell you a couple of things. She is going to send out this link later to this great article that will, shouldn't take you very long to read it over lunch one day. It's really a great article. There's so many different ways to use the wheel of life. It's a teaching tool. So just like for those of you who grew up in, say, the Catholic Church and you saw stained glass windows, they were meant as teaching tools because not that many people were literate. So the whole stories in the stained glass were meant to allow priests and all those folks to teach people about the stories of the Bible. Well, the same is true for the wheel of life. Let me read this little thing to you about, the Buddha. It was designed when the Buddha Shakyamuni was alive, and he wanted it placed at the front of monasteries, and so that people entering it, and he wanted a monk placed there so that if people came by, the monk could explain and teach through the wheel of life. So, and each area of it can be broken down, and oh my goodness, sometimes teachers leading Samsara and Nirvana will just use this for all 4 classes because it's so packed. And I've been through several classes with Geshe Gelik. There's multiple ways of looking at it, and I want to give you just a quick overview. Hold on a second. So the 12 links of dependent origination are in here, but also it's divided into all kinds of other categories. So the very center, you will see the, I'm trying to find my notes. In the very center, you'll see the 3 root poisons. You see it should be a rooster, which is desire and pride, attachment, all of that delusion. The snake represents anger, and the pig represents ignorance. And hold on just one second. Okay, so that's the very center. And those are the 3 poisonous attitudes, or the 3 root afflictions. And what it's showing is that all of our karmic actions are based on these attitudes. It's through our 3 gates of body, speech, and mind. These actions created out of ignorance, hatred, and attachment create the seeds for all kinds of things, but create the seeds for our existence. The second ring outside of that, you'll see is kind of half black and half white, and the beings in the black half are depicted as in a state of suffering. They're being forced downwards to rebirth in the lower realms. And you can see, and you'll find other pictures of this online, so you can blow it up a little bit, and you'll also see this at the center when we return. Is there somebody kind of forcing them down? It actually has a rope, and he's kind of pushing them down to the lower realms. And the other circle, the beings are depicted as happy and leading to rebirths in the upper realms due to their positive actions. But like I said before, they're just going round and round. They haven't really escaped. And then the outer circle, this depicts the 12 links of dependent origination that make up the wheel of life, the very outer circle. In the other one, you're still going to see other realms of existence. Okay, so the very outer circle, the first link is at the very top is a blind man with a cane. And this represents, again, ignorance. Ignorance is described as wrong consciousness that conceives the opposite of how things actually exist. Just as a person with no eyes depends upon something else to find his way, ignorance obscures our mind, and we need to depend on something in order to obtain liberation. So out of ignorance, we create actions, which is the second one, is the potter. I think that's right on the left, the potter making pots of many shapes. This is the karmic formations. So this is formations, karmic formations, which can lead to many different types of aggregates within the 6 realms, depending on our deeds. So the whole point is one thing leads to another. Now, before I move on, I just want to say that there's lots of different ways to teach this, the Wheel of Life. We're just going through this very briefly so you see these 12 links, but they're not necessarily as a teaching tool meant to be sequential. We're looking at them sequentially, but they're meant to be used in a variety of ways I can try to touch on. But it can be used in terms of lifetimes and how lifetimes are created, but even just how karmic seeds are created and how these things are created so that we stay here over and over again. The article that we're going to send you breaks down these into stages. So the first stage of impelling causes, the causes of another life here, but also the causes of other things ripening, are first ignorance. The second link, which is in this text, you're going to hear it called compounding factors. That's what I was calling karmic formations. Part of the frustration is everything's translated a little bit differently in each different thing you read, but those are the same. So karmic formations or compounding factors. And then the third one is up there is consciousness. And that's depicted as a monkey in a tree or a monkey going from tree to tree. And it's not like a brand new consciousness. It's the consciousness that was involved with the ignorance and creating those karmic formations. That consciousness, let's say I lost my mind in a state of rage and I harmed somebody. That consciousness that arose as I created that harmful act, it continues on with those seeds. And that's covered beautifully in this article we're going to send you, because the author writes about how confused he was, thinking that was a brand new state of consciousness. And what he learned in his studies was, no, that actually that consciousness that created that harmful deed, it's like those tendencies are still in that mind state that then will get triggered again because it hasn't been eradicated. You know, that's still carrying those karmic seeds in this lifetime and into future lifetimes. So this is why I'm saying it's very complex, but it's almost like a dormant mind state that's still there and can get triggered. I mean, we talk now about triggers. This is exactly what they're talking about as well. So he says, rather, consciousness refers to a particular instance of consciousness that carries the imprints of karmic actions. Specifically, is the substantial continuation of the very consciousness that created the karmic action. So what we talk about in Buddhism all the time is the continuation of consciousness. So even if I never harmed somebody in that same way again, if I hadn't cleaned up that mind state, that remains as a dormant state of mind or consciousness in my mind stream as I move forward in this life and others. So I hope that helps. So those are the first stage of impelling causes, are ignorance, the first three links: ignorance, compounding factors, and consciousness. Then where the article we're going to send you breaks off is they take other links, not in sequential order, to talk about the stages, the second stage of actualizing causes, and the third stage of result. But we're not going to do that because we're just going to go through it sequentially. So, because we only have a few minutes. And this is easier, just to go around the wheel, and then you can look at the more, this other breakdown of it, this other way to study it. So number 4 is name and form. It's a man in a boat. This symbolizes the 5 aggregates that we've gone over before. The effect consciousness joined to the form of the next life. So that's, yeah, those are the 5 aggregates in the next life, and it's symbolized by a man in a boat. Number 5 is the 6 sense organs, and that is represented with a house. Yeah, a house with 6 windows. So it's so small here, I can't really see, but I think I think I see where it is. So just know that it's a house with 6 windows. This refers to the development of the basis of the 6 consciousnesses needed in order to function. The 6th one is contact. So contact is when our our aggregates encounter something else and then have the sensation of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. So contact is pictured by the contact of a man and a woman. Consciousness that distinguishes objects as pleasure, painful, or neutral upon coming together, object, consciousness, and sense organ. Those things coming together, that creates contact. The next thing, because contact comes before feeling. So there has to be contact, and then they might be like so quickly together, but they differentiate these things in the wheel. So the 7th feeling is a man with an arrow in his eye, because I think we can all understand how that would feel. Feeling is a mental factor that experiences pleasure, pain, or neutral feeling upon the object having been distinguished as pleasure, pain, or neutral feeling. Pleasurable feelings generate a strong desire for more, and pain generates a strong desire for avoidance. So usually what happens, there's contact, there's feeling, and then either we want to repeat that feeling or we never want to repeat that feeling again. Or it's completely neutral and we don't care. If it is pleasurable, number 8 is a man drinking wine. That's craving, a type of desire, a mental factor that increases desire but is not satisfied. So it's not that once the craving is met, it's going to be complete. It's not. It just continues to be needed to be refilled again. So that's a man drinking wine. Is that rising of I want this again, which is differentiated from grasping, which is number 9. Number 9 is a monkey holding an uneaten piece of fruit, but still reaching for more. So when we have the craving that arises from the pleasant feeling upon contact with our 6 sense organs, then grasping, I want this more. I want this again. I don't want this to leave. I really like this. One generates craving to stay with pleasurable objects and to separate from painful objects. So grasping could also be grasping at, wanting to keep that away, something negative away. When this is produced over and over again, it develops strongly, and this is grasping. Now we've really developed a very strong grasping for it. So understanding all of these can help us break that pattern when we understand how these things are moving in this chain. So then number 10 is a pregnant woman about to give birth. And so grasping then moves to becoming, something called existence. This is the ripening of the seed of the 2nd link by the 8th and 9th links to the moment before it comes into the next life. So, excuse me, but it gets very complicated if you're breaking this down into what they were just talking about. Like this is the 2nd link by the 8th and the 9th. What they're really describing is then, that the 8th and the 9th, the craving and the grasping is part of the actualizing of then becoming, about coming into existence. 11 is a woman giving birth. So that's the moment of birth. And the 12th, old age and death, which is a corpse being carried on someone's back. This takes place the moment after, this link, old age and death, takes place from the moment after birth until death. So all these other links are contributing to the coming into existence. And then as soon as the being is coming into existence, aging is happening. So, according to Buddhists and Tibetan Buddhists are always talking about, we kind of in our Western mind are like, this is a young person. And what Geshe has said to me is they're always seeing it that this is an aging person. It's just that spectrum. They're not keeping people over here as just young. It's like everybody is aging. Everybody now is in the 12th link of moving towards death. The entire wheel is held in the jaws of the Lord of Death while being grasped by his hands and feet. This signifies that beings are controlled by death, by their own karma and delusions. Wherever one is born within the wheel, wherever one is born within this wheel, one has to experience suffering and death. Outside of the wheel of life, usually in the upper right corner, is an image of the Buddha. This indicates that he has gone beyond the wheel of life. The full moon on the upper left corner symbolizes liberation, the full moon. symbolizes liberation. Buddha is pointing to the full moon, indicating such is liberation, one should attain this goal, which also may be found on some tankas. So you'll see this tanka at the center. You can also just Google this and get a larger image of it and take a look at all the different things that we were talking about. I know that's a lot to talk about, but it's the article that we're going to send you, again, creates these 3 stages of these impelling causes that we've talked about: ignorance, compounding factors, and consciousness. Then the actualizing causes of craving, grasping, and existence. And then the results, which end with, coming into existence, birth, aging, and death. For them, they also break out. Well, I don't want to get into too technical stuff, but I really encourage you to read the article because it will talk about 2 different ways of using this wheel. And again, it's such an incredible teaching tool. Excuse me. See, it's a good thing we're not in person. So it's an incredible teaching tool about everything that we've been covering in this module of Samsara and Nirvana. So we spend all this time talking about Samsara. I don't have any coming attractions of Nirvana except the upper right-hand corner. That everything else is Samsara, just going round and around and around again. Oh, this is a nice part of the ride. This is a not so nice part of the ride. And the reason we are dissecting everything is to try to get off of the wheel and help everyone else get off of the wheel as well. So any comments, thoughts, questions, frustrations? That was a lot to pack in 15 minutes, but I feel like I did my duty there. So you will get a copy of this excellent article that I was just describing. I used to have, and I cannot find it online anymore, but an interactive wheel. So you could click on different parts and they would show what was going on. It was really, really cool. I think that's it, unless there's any questions. Is there any chat, Linda? Nope. Okay. Okay. So
Sorry, I was posting the links. So I did post the links in the chat box on both YouTube and Zoom. So you can try to cut and paste that before we close out. And no, there are no questions or anything in chat. Yeah, okay, no.
Okay.
We're good.
Well, I just want to thank you all for attending on Zoom. It's not an easy thing to do, and you all were amazing in being alert and bearing with me as we all muddle through Zoom together. As Linda said, the next class is in July, so you'll be getting information about that. And let's just dedicate all the merit that you've created by attending tonight's class and any other classes that you participated in, just thinking about these topics. Again, Geshe would always say to me, who is on a Monday night spending this amount of time even thinking about getting out of this wheel, liberation, benefiting other people? How many people are even sitting around thinking about impermanence and the nature of samsara? So take a minute to just be rejoicing in your own good deeds of creating that. It's like we've just been studying how every single action that we have is creating karma. That's exactly what it's doing. And so what you've been engaged in is creating positive seeds in your mind stream that will carry forward. And so now you, in dedicating them, are selecting where you want them to ripen. So dedicate them so that you are able to liberate yourself from this wheel of life as quickly as possible, that you may completely develop the 2 wings of compassion and wisdom. So that you may be free of this unease and help all those still trapped in that state to be free as well. And with that, we end this DB module. Thank you all very much. Linda, thank you so much. I couldn't have done a second of it without your help.
Oh, thank you. It was a great class. Thanks everyone for coming. Make sure you cut and paste that that article link. I'll go ahead and post it on the Kadampa Center website as well. Maybe I'll just attach it to the homework page that's posted there. But thank you all so much. Hope to see you July 20th for Transforming Problems.
Keep doing your homework. You'll be a step ahead when you go to Transforming Problems. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Bye.